Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, I'm no qua Osinachi. One man Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama Osinachi. Not because I suffer fast, not because I pray and fast. No be your show, no be jazz. I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, I'm no qua Osinachi. One man Osinachi, I'm watching. Daily Osinachi, Mama Osinachi.
Good morning, everyone. The panelists, if you can hear me, I need one of you to indicate so that we can start. It is exactly 8 o'clock at my end, and it should be 3 o'clock. Thank you, Dr. Miles. Yeah, so everyone can hear me, so we can start right away. Uh, Again, good morning from my neck of the wood. Morning, North America, afternoon, Europe, afternoon, West Africa, and any other place you are. We greet you. We thank you for finding the time to join us. This is the panel on pedagogy of teaching. Uh, Quite interesting world that really reflects who we are as teachers. The challenges such as the pronunciation of the word is that pedagogy, and you can get so many variations on YouTube that may sound so intangible, but very, extremely tangible in terms of, folks understanding what exactly you are talking about. But notwithstanding the challenge of the pronunciation of the word itself, uh, what is also challenging is the training. Most of us, particularly when you do not study education or you happen not to find yourself in the College of Education or the Faculty of Education or the School of Education with a subject area, then you have a major challenge of how do I grapple with teaching if I end up to be a teacher. Uh, Also important is the nature of pedagogy. But there are benefits out of these challenges, benefits such as planning, designing, giving us a better content and context, and also being culturally relevant, developing or adopting a pedagogy that is culturally relevant to our audience, be it in the classroom or outside the classroom. But for me, and I believe for most of you, is the decolonization of the Eurocentric pedagogical view, whether in the STEM area or in the humanities. I remember sometimes ago in 2013 at Afebabalola University, there was a focus on pedagogy, and I happened to be one of the presenters. In fact, I'm delighted that some of those young men then are now professors. And 2013, I went back to the website to see the names listed. But I remember Professor Kebukola, who is the current Pro-Chancellor of National Open University of Nigeria and a former acting VC of Lagos State University, admonishing everyone that please, my friend, it will just stop you. Don't quote these white men and what have you. Are you telling me you do not have, an African, somebody that has done work in this area? So you need to go back and research. Go back. So that is to the extent of which Professor Kebukola wants us to decolonize our minds and being able to present most of the time the Afrocentric perspective. So pedagogy is about the way we teach, the art and science of teaching. It goes beyond theories and concepts. It is indeed the art and science of learning. And I also remember as I, started with this opening commentary, that the UNESCO initiative is also germane for those of us that are early scholars, and indeed those of us that are either middle scholars or long-time scholars, whatever category you want to put yourself, we are all scholars and colleagues. But what is important about UNESCO is the General History of Africa Pedagogy Initiative that I will advise us to pick. You can see this online. And then also on YouTube, you can listen to what it is about, and it will be a learning moment. At this point, I am delighted to welcome our panelists. Uh, Four of them are here. I'm thinking I should have 5, but let's see. Not in the order of seniority, but more importantly, in the order of, unfortunately, we cannot, okay, I can share screen because I intend to share screen to introduce the panelists. The first is Dr. Adekola. Dr. Adekola is a historian and an archaeologist currently with the University of Ibadan. So I'm projecting the website page, and I want to believe you are able to see this, and then you visit to get to know him more. He can do a little bit more out of his 25 minutes that he will be given to present or share his knowledge with us. Next will be Professor Ademo with the Afe Babalola University. I chose to highlight this particular web page within the university website, reflecting what the founder, called some of us that are outside our university in 2013 to interrogate and to also help in teaching the young teachers at Afe Babalola. Next is someone that I don't think is with us yet. Dr. Kwame Essien is another person I think I would say following now Professor Said Adenito. These are all UT Austin PhD graduates. I think the last time I read from him was when he was seeking a reference. It's good that he is tenured and he is still with Lehigh University, where he started his career after graduating from UT Austin. Next is Dr. Ivy Miles. Dr. Miles, again, I think we've been in touch before, and she is still at University of California, Berkeley, a renowned historian of African diaspora and African history. She will also do more introduction. Last but not the least is our brother, Dr. Tabiti Willis, who is currently with Carleton University and also a historian of African history as well as African diaspora. We will start with, I cannot see. Okay, I think we'll just go in the order that we have projected here because it seems we are missing two of our colleagues in action. And that will be ACN and a colleague from UI. So we're going to start with Professor Adeyemi Ademo. I believe the host would allow all of us to be able to project. Should you have a PowerPoint to project? I want to thank Dr. Myers for sending a PowerPoint, but I think you have access to also present. So it will be in this order. In fact, I want to change the order. As Abigail Adams admonished the founding fathers of the United States in that beautiful letter in the late 1790s to the men in Philadelphia, she ended up with the phrase, whatever you men do in Philadelphia, remember the ladies. They did not remember the ladies until 1901, when they remember the European or white ladies, allowed them to vote, and of course, the colored ones until the civil rights. But I will not wait. I don't want to be in that column. I will allow Dr. Miles to go first, and then the gentleman can proceed thereafter, except if she is yielding. So in the spirit of Abigail Adams, the wife of the second president of the United States, I hereby call on Professor Ivy Miles to present. But if you would like to yield to Ademowo or Tabiti, please do. You can unmute, ma'am.
Well, I am happy to yield and follow the order listed on the conference schedule.
Okay.
So I'm very happy to yield.
Okay.
It might be easier for those who are, juggling multiple panels. But I'm
Okay.
also can go first if you'd like me to go first, but I'm happy to yield.
She has acted indeed like a mother that she is. Moms are so precious. And you can see that she has yielded back. But I believe Professor Ademowo would like to go, right? Go ahead without hesitation.
Thank you.
And let's have it as a slide.
Yeah, sure. It is a slide, isn't it?
No, show the whole slide, not so that we
Okay,
don't see
cool.
what is on the side. Yeah.
Okay, cool, good.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a minute.
And congratulations. I don't know how many years ago, but
thank you so much for that. Just a few minutes. I'm sorry, I closed the other time. Yep. Shit.
you can proceed, sir.
Okay, cool,
20
good.
minutes.
Just a minute. Okay. What essentially, let me just thank Professor Adenito and others, and also the chairman, Professor Tijani. Nice to see you again. Of course, I always see you. I read about you, especially when you returned home a few years ago. So I don't know why you run back, but that's another story for another day, I guess. Okay, I'm delighted to talk on this. Not rocket science, virtual teaching, and technology. Most times, Professor Adenito had a discussion with me when during the COVID, a lot of universities were going on, were closing down as a result of the marching order of the federal government. It was surprised that our university did not actually discontinue our teaching. And that, to him, is something that he would have wanted his alma mater, which is University of Ibadan, to also partake in. Unfortunately, a lot of universities could not, maybe because we have much foresight when in 2011, 2012, the founder of the university was thinking about the future. That is Arafe Babalala. And then 2013, we started the pedagogy, the teaching methods. We had that foresight because we have, even before COVID-19, we were thinking that the bodies and the location might not be the major issue with time. Why? Because, for instance, our founder did not see the four walls of university. He learned whatever he is able to learn but via correspondence, and he was able to do that, successfully. So he was already thinking, what is going to happen? And he was able to bring this, even before the COVID-19. But the reality that COVID-19 throws in our faces today is that we cannot continue a conventional way. In fact, we cannot continue to treat everything as usual. The pandemic disrupted the traditional classroom learning, and giving knowledge became something we cannot just continue the usual way. And that for us is something we should start thinking about. I'm sure my colleagues who are teaching in this side of the world, not in America or in Britain, who are teaching in universities that are under lock and keys right now, we understand what I'm talking about. I'm probably fortunate. I teach in a university where we have 23 hours 23 hours or 23 and a half hours of light, maybe for 30 minutes for changing over, where we have internet facility, we have staff quarters, and we have the students around. But unfortunately, my colleagues are not. Today we realize that we have to switch over. We have to, what COVID-19 threw at us is that we just have to go beyond just what we're teaching in the classroom. We need to go to think about what we could share with the students, even when they are not in our classrooms. Of course, when I said it's not a rocket science, maybe I should go back there. For us, in this part of the world, it is something that is we have to think about and conceptualize. But see, remote learning and virtual learning, it's like we want to move to teaching without the classroom, something we're not taught, the way we are not taught by some of us who finished from University of Ibadan, for instance. We're taught being in classroom and doing everything in classroom. No, we have moved beyond. It's today we are talking about, doing school by changing location. We want to take care of school, but change location. But again, it's different from learning, virtual learning, which is doing school in virtual environment. They are not the same. And I will tell you why. The Harvard experience, at the beginning of COVID-19 crisis, we moved from learning, we started our lectures. We have started the year activities already. We have started our lectures. But then there was COVID and we had to close down. What happened to us actually was a case of, having to shift online. We moved to remote learning. A lot of times, and this is why I've chosen to look at this, a lot of times when we talk about virtual teaching, a lot of people think it's just about going online to teach. It's totally different. We were not preparing for virtual learning. When we moved from classroom and our students went home, we have to find a way to teach. And that is remote teaching. They are learning remotely. And we're teaching them teaching just remotely. It's not the same because we just simply continue our traditional way of teaching in a remote way. The virtuality that was brought on board became inevitable, and we just continue with the curriculum we have drafted for the classroom. We just continue them via remote. The virtual learning and the virtual teaching part was actually not prepared for. We didn't prepare for it. We didn't. But see what has happened for right now, for instance, that is different. We have realized. And that is exactly the major thing. When you are preparing, and this is where the pedagogy are totally different. You are not, when you are teaching remotely, and when you are teaching, which is virtual teaching and virtual learning, when the two mix together, you are going to put the conditionalities, what will make the student feel as if they are in the classroom virtually. A lot of African, or let me use the Nigeria, which I'm comfortable with, a lot of those who claim to teach immediately after COVID went into remote teaching. But we are not talking about virtual. But then there's a lot that has to do with it. Because when we talk about virtual teaching, it's not only about present, it's not about just the opportunities. It presents itself as something we need to look at from a perspective of promoting new ways of thinking. It's a new way of thinking about teaching, about learning, and often about traditional classroom. What do I mean by that? Essentially, we were saying that today, for instance, the art of virtual teaching has made it mandatory for us to include virtual learning tactics, techniques into our pedagogy and also our, our pattern of teaching, our teaching methods. And the implication is that today, whether we like it or not, we must understand that virtual learning is not a traditional classroom activity that will move online. It is a learning experience integrated within the curriculum that is specifically designed to be experienced online. What I mean by this is, I remember I organized an online event in 2020. I had people participate. Professor Bewaji was there. We have someone from NCC, Bamidele. What they brought out, what they highlighted, is that a lot of us who were emergency virtual teachers will just do the same thing the way we have been doing it. But virtual teaching must of essence, inculcate what you call virtual learning. A lot of what I've seen online, I've attended a few teaching, virtual teaching classes, and a lot of them actually did not. A lot of them highlighted this problem, the lacuna. Again, virtual learning must be designed in such a way to individualize learning experience. Even when shared with others, the individualized touch must be retained. The implication for us is that most times we are preparing virtually, but we were not getting to pass the learning experience virtually. So we want to teach virtually, but we don't want the learning to be to the student to get it right, because when you don't have what it takes, if you do not put all the ingredients that will make them to have what you call online based experience, online experience online, they experience the class online, and it will not be we can't get it. Again, the third one is the pedagogical concern. The development of instructional knowledge and strategy, again, we have to be different. Is the one that the classroom wall will come down and individual learning path for the students will emerge in virtual spaces. In other words, from what I've said, a lot of people will like, somebody won't ask me, they will say, what I've said, a lot of what I've said is just like distance learning. Virtual teaching is part of online, distance learning and all this stuff, but it is not. It is not. Essentially, one might just be thinking, if one is saying that virtual teaching the way I've projected it, and I'm repeating this because a lot of times we want to teach online, but then we are not mindful of all the necessary ingredients, even from the topic to the interactiveness to the feedback, and how to ensure that we gauge the experience of the student. A lot of the students who probably are taking Udemy or take Coursera and taking LinkedIn learning classes will attend our normal virtual teaching classes in Nigeria, and we feel that, is this the same? Are they the same? The package, the audio, the other teaching supportive teaching materials will not fit in, because we just feel that everything should be online. Now, but again, there's a problem. We are talking about virtual teaching. In this part of our world, we are having issues. even the teachers that want to do the virtual teaching are having issues. It's that of computer electronic gadgets. We have a CBT center. We have computer. I have computer in the office. A lot of our colleagues who are in other, the public schools, even some private schools, do not have the gadgets. They are not paid. They are paid next to peanuts. They can't get the gadgets. They do not have access to the internet. Availability is different from purchase of data. Even some of the students that you want to teach, that you have developed so much for, you've developed the curriculum, you build the training part aspect of it to teach. They decide to visit the village, probably visit their mother, our uncle at home during the time, and they could not, because that part is not part of the data coverage of some of our internet providers. Then again, there is a technological competence of the teachers, the technological dexterity, ability to participate in forum like this, be able to develop teaching aids. Some prepared the PowerPoint, and you look at it, and it's actually not PowerPoint, it's WordPoint. We don't have additional teaching aids that could make the students capture. There are instances where people, I've participated in classes where they have to, the instructor had to have one or two professionals from the field who joined from different parts of the world, and they were able to feel as if this is it. Even some of the students have not been there. Now, we also have, which is the number 5, the pedagogical issues. Like I highlighted earlier, the way people teach, the way we teach, the way we teach in traditional classrooms, the way we prepare for traditional classrooms are not the same, and it's actually not the same way to prepare for virtual teaching. Virtual teaching is totally different. You don't, the notes, the materials that you share, how you allow your students to give you feedback. You could see how everybody faces when they're in class. You could read some meaning. You might not be able to read all those things online. You might not be able to know some people who are going through a lot of stress. If you come into class, you could see a lot of things, but you could not see it online. These are some of the techniques you need to know, you need to deploy. You must have a technique to deploy to make sure you monitor this. The final one is the myopic governance. Our leaders have problems, they have issues. Right now, a lot of them, the funding of university education or higher education in Nigeria is nowhere, it's nothing to write home about. Why are they not funding education? This is a big issue. Even when they are funding education, what are they funding? I know Professor Tijani, for instance, had to work on partnering with the now open university and this tech fund to take some people to Morgan, which is one way to develop some of them. But how many lecturers, how many academics have access to some of this training if it's not international training like that? How many schools have the fund to get the students to get themselves prepared for this? Technically, to colleagues, from regardless of these above challenges, my own position to colleagues is that we can't afford to be left behind. Virtual teaching has come to stay. We implemented it, and like I said, I don't always want to use. Recently, when the president congratulated Afebala University for its ranking number 1 and 4, a lot of people were having issues with that. But then what we found out as plays or put into developing the university, developing those who are teaching and developing the students and also the facilities is something that we need to. But a lot of our colleagues are working with next to nothing. And believe me, I always say it, when people work with next to nothing, it's difficult to get a lot out. But then it's not a rocket science, but like I've said, or I've posited earlier, even though it's not rocket science, there's a lot that has to do with it, which is, I said, we must understand that there's difference between virtual teaching and virtual remote teaching. They are not the same. Sometimes you have to transcend remote to go to virtual teaching. Because for those who are used to practice to the traditional, they also said there are some certain challenges we need to surmount. Regardless of these challenges that I've highlighted, I want to appeal to colleagues that in contemporary world, we can't afford to be left behind. Virtual teaching have come to stay. We must develop ourselves. We must improve our pedagogical activity in developing the right materials that could suit that space, the online space, the online learning environment that we want our students to fit into. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you so much. We can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Professor Adeyemo, for that presentation. One of the questions that was coming up is what is the difference between virtual teaching and remote teaching? When do you gauge or you know that learning has occurred? For all the panelists, you will save questions. Please also check the chat room because that is the only way our attendees can ask questions or make a comment. So at the end of all the presentations, we will visit that and respond to such questions. At this point, I could see Dr. Adekola in and out. So we've established, the order of presentation because we didn't get to see you when we started. I'm going to call on Dr. Ivy Miles to present our paper. Dr. Ademowo, please stop sharing. Stop sharing to enable our colleagues from the University of California, Berkeley to present. Thank you, sir. You have the same number of minutes as established. My time is 8. I'll say it's 8:32, but I'll time you out as 8:35. So you can go ahead, please. And then the rest of us can mute ourselves. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, good morning. Dr. Adekola, please mute yourself.
Hello.
Also, kindly, I do not want this distraction. This will be the last time, please. Also, I don't have the power to remove people. The next I will be is to remove you, even if you are a panelist. We have a decorum here. Dr. Adekola, you need to mute yourself.
Okay, I've muted myself.
Please, I have somebody that is presenting. Please kindly just chat with us, please. It will be difficult to oh, Jesus Christ. Dr. Miles, please go ahead.
Hello,
please.
everybody. Greetings to everyone. Thank you very much, Professor Kijani. My name is Ivy Mills, and I am a continuing lecturer in the History of Art department at the University of California, Berkeley. So my work is on African and African diaspora visual cultures primarily, although I've also been trained in literature and Black cultural studies. And so today I'm going to be talking about syllabus design. And this is something that I spend a lot of time working on and thinking about, not only because I have been designing and teaching syllabi for 16 years. I first started teaching actually at Suffolk University's Dakar campus in Senegal. And then I've been teaching at UC Berkeley for the past several years. So I'm also sharing insights from my 8 years of experience serving as my department's reading and composition coordinator. So in my role as coordinator, I mentor and supervise the graduate student instructors who teach the reading and composition courses that are offered by our department. So these are special courses that are offered across campus. They're required courses, so all students have to take them, and they're meant to teach the fundamentals of critical reading, academic writing, college level research, while at the same time introducing the students to a particular discipline. So these courses introduce students to a line of inquiry within a particular field. In my case, that's the history of art. I've overseen the development and instruction of over 100 reading and composition sections. And as I said, these are taught primarily by graduate student instructors. So it's graduate students who are learning how to design courses and teach them on their own. And so the process that I'm going to walk you through today is really a distillation of the same process that I take these graduate students through as they are learning how to design a course for the first time. And of course, I might mention as well that, you know, I'm teaching it at the University of California, Berkeley. It is a particular context. We have a particular, there are particular requirements. And so you would certainly make adjustments based on whatever the requirements are for syllabi at your university and in your program. Okay, so I want to share these 4 key principles. The first one is less is more, and this is the most important thing. Okay, usually graduate students, when they start to imagine a future course that they might teach, they try to do too much. And that is totally normal because you as a graduate student are reading everything in your area of specialization, right? You are required to know everything about the topic of your dissertation, to read everything. And so that's the mode that you're in, right? That's the expectation that's placed on you. And so you think as you prepare to teach a course that's related perhaps to your dissertation topic or your area of specialization, you think that that's what you need to do, okay? But if you're teaching undergraduate students, that is not the best way to approach syllabus design. You want to constantly remind yourself, less is more, because undergraduates cannot process huge amounts of information, you know, copious reading, too many assignments. They can't do it, and that learning is going to suffer in your courses. So less is more is the most important sort of design principle as you're designing a class. Second, you want to focus on conversation, not coverage. Okay, so instead of trying to you know, cover everything related to your topic, right? You want to instead think of the course as crafting a kind of conversation that develops over the course of the semester. All right, so you want to emphasize that what you're exposing the students to is a kind of conversation about a topic, right? And you want to build conversation as well in the course. You're not just sort of imparting information and trying to cover everything about your topic. Third, a key principle is depth beats breadth, and this is related to the second one. So it is much more satisfying for the students, and they tend to learn more and retain more if you go into great depth into a particular topic rather than try to cover a lot of different things and really only, you know, cover them in this very sort of surface way. The third principle is do you. I very strongly believe that you are a more effective teacher If you're teaching something that you really care about and that you're passionate about, that you think is important, and that also you feel like it's your course, right? If you're just feeling like, okay, well, I have to assign this text and that text and that text just because I have to, I feel like I have to, it's not really what I want to do, but I feel like I have to. You may be in that situation where that's what you're obliged to do, right? Because it's part of your job, but you have to figure out a way to kind of make yours, right? To even if perhaps you set the students up so that they can critique a text that you don't particularly like, but that you have to teach. But you really sort of have to make it your own. Okay, so I'm taking you through steps. All right, these are the steps that we go through as we start to work on a syllabus. First step is to brainstorm. And this is the first step in writing as well, coming up with a research project. So it's actually really good for instructors to kind of go through the same process that we're asking our students to go through. So what questions do you want to explore with your students? What do you want them to learn? Also really important, what kinds of questions and materials are appropriate for the student's level? And this is very, very key. Because the way that you design a course for first years, and in my case, we do a lot of work in reading and composition, so there's the specific goals for that course, is very different from the course that you design for majors in your field who are juniors or seniors. And that course is going to be very different from a graduate course. So it's really important to design a syllabus that's appropriate for the student's level. Also, you'd ask what kinds of questions and material are appropriate for the format of the course. So that's really important too. At UC Berkeley in my department, some of the classes are lecture courses and some are seminar courses. And in lecture courses, the instructor takes the helm and spends a lot of time talking, presenting material. But in a seminar style course, the students are asked to present quite a bit and to lead conversations. They're expected to do a lot of independent work, to read a good deal on their own, and to really kind of lead the conversations during the course sessions. And the instructor kind of acts as a moderator. So obviously that should also inform the design of the syllabus. You could also think about how your course might contribute to or expand the current curriculum. So, thinking about how your course can add something to what the department already offers, right? You can even think about your course as a kind of intervention, right? You could be, in a sort of history department that, is maybe offering a very Eurocentric account of world history, and you want to make an intervention, right? And teach a very different course that seeks to kind of decolonize the study of history, the study of African history in particular, right? So you can think of your course as a kind of intervention. That's really important, and that, students respond so positively to that kind of course that really kind of shifts the way that they understand the field. Okay, second step, write a course description and title. This is very important step that we spend a lot of time on. What is a course description? It is a succinct, polished, and clear synopsis of the course topic, the questions that you're going to be asking in the course, and the goals of the course. Well, goals and objectives, and we'll talk about that in a minute. At UC Berkeley, this is a public text. It's really important. It's really important that it accurately represents what your course is about. It's really also important that it be a polished piece of writing, because it appears not only on the syllabus, which you'll distribute to your students, but it appears on the department's website. All right, so it's publicly posted, and it also appears on the schedule of classes. So as students are looking for classes to take and they're browsing, the course description can really attract them, right? They can read it and say, oh, this course sounds incredibly interesting. I want to take this course. And in our context and in the United States, universities care very much about enrollment right now, and the survival of your department is dependent on enrollment. So attracting students, getting them into your class, getting a good number of students in your class is really important. So I've given you a couple of links, and I'll just show you a little snapshot of those in a second. You can go to this link and see the list of courses offered in my department. These are the RNC courses are at the very top, and then the other courses follow. And then also I've given you a link to a description for a course designed and taught by a grad student, and I'm going to refer back to this course in a minute. Okay. Right, so this is just a screenshot of what that looks like on our website, and so you'll see there's the sort of generic title of the course, and then the specific title of the course that indicates the course topic, and then the instructor's name, and then you'll see that there's the first few lines of the course description. You click on it and you get the full course description. And this is what a course description looks like. This is a typical reading and composition course description. This is entirely, as I said, designed and written by a graduate student in our department. Okay. And I'm going to give you a lot of text here, and we don't have time to really look at the text very closely, but you're welcome to ask me questions about these. We can, if we have time, we can return to them and look at them more closely. So what I'm sharing right now is a series of 3 courses that I designed. And they're all courses on Lagos, okay? They're all in the city of Lagos, but they're at 3 different levels, okay? So it should give you a little bit of a sense of how you would adjust the content of the course and how you describe the course dependent on the level of the students. So this is the very first level. This is for a lower division course. These students are new to college. And also they're learning how to conduct research for the very first time. Many of them never set foot in a research library. They don't know how to search for academic sources online. Sorry, I have something going on with my computer here. I just lost my screen. There we go. Do you guys still see the screen? Sorry,
Yes,
I'm having a little bit of
yes.
a technical, some technical difficulties.
Yes, we do.
Oh, you do? Okay. You still see the here we go. There we go. Okay. I think I'm back on track here. I hope I am at least.
Yeah, we can see the 3 courses on Lagos.
Okay, great. I'm just trying to see if I've kind of lost my functionality actually. Can I, I'm just gonna stop the share and then reshare it if you don't mind, so that I can get back to it. So sorry for this. Okay, I think I'm back here and I'm able to move through the screen. Thank you. Okay, so the very first, the first course I'm sharing with you is for lower division students. Because in this course, we have to spend so much time talking about how to do research, how to write a longer paper. We don't have time to cover a huge amount of content. So you'll see that the first part of the course description is a kind of hook. It's a description of a public sculpture that was controversial, and this sculpture really brings us into the course content. And we spend the first half of the semester looking at materials that help us develop a kind of more nuanced interpretation of this artwork. And over the course of the semester, we only can really cover 3 different things, 3 topics. That's the max that we can cover. So this gives you a sense of how to think about what you can accomplish in a lower division course where you have a lot of other things to do aside from just covering content. This is a course that I developed for upper division history of art majors, juniors and seniors. So this is a different version of the Lagos course where we were able to do so much more. So there are, multiple units on different things, the fashioning of the modern self in early Lagosian photography. We look at maps, we look at Fela, we look at Nollywood. We were able to cover much more because these students are more advanced, and also because of the format of the course. The third example is a graduate course, and this is a course that I co-designed with Dr. Charisma Acey, who is an urban planner. And this was a very special course that enabled us to take students to Lagos over spring break, and also was focused on sort of thinking about global cities in an interdisciplinary way. So we're really looking at the intersection of questions of development and infrastructure, and visual culture and the arts. And so you can see that this is a much more ambitious syllabus that seeks to cover a lot more. So not only what I covered in the upper division history of art seminar, but also covers a lot of material on urban planning and development. Okay, so that's the course description. The next step is to choose objects, case studies, and readings, right? So you know what you want your course to be about, you know what your key questions are. Now it's time to actually choose your readings and other kinds of objects you're going to focus on. You want to select materials that speak directly to the core questions of your course. So you don't want to have anything that's extraneous. You want to organize those materials so as to generate a conversation that develops over the course of the semester. So you want to think, okay, what needs to come first and second and last? You want to think of your first materials as the starting points for the conversation, and think about the subsequent materials as adding nuance and complexity to that conversation. Another thing that I highly recommend doing is to consider employing scaffolding, which refers to instructional techniques that you start out with the basics, and once the students have mastered those basics, then you do something that's a little bit more complex that builds on those basics. And so you're designing the course in such a way so as to constantly build on what the students have already learned, but to start small and give them a chance to master certain skills first, and then you move on to the next ones. Then you work on the class schedule, which is also incredibly important, right? Which is to create a completely detailed schedule where every single day that you meet is on the schedule, and it's very clear to the students what you're going to be doing on that day. It's also important to put all of the deadlines for all of the assignments and the exams and so forth on this schedule. They should be able to see the plan for the entire semester at a glance. So you don't want to overload the schedule with long readings and excessively burdensome assignments. You want to remember that less is more. So you choose your materials very carefully, and you do not need to assign everything ever written on your topic. Okay. Step 5 is to add the front matter. And this is a very lengthy section, at least for us, where you have not only the course description, but all of the policies related to the course, policies related to plagiarism. You also include campus resources, information about accommodations, and these days too, we include a land acknowledgement because we are on the unceded ancestral land of the Ohlone people. So it's an acknowledgement of the indigenous claim to the land that the university sits on. And this has actually become a really important moment at the beginning of the semester, is to talk about this land acknowledgement, and to also sort of think about the fact that the university, at least in this American context, is a colonial institution. And that it provides a very effective segue to talking about, if you're talking about African material, it's a highly effective way to kind of get to connect to it. There also, a lot of these sections include, boilerplate language. So in other words, there might be sections that you don't write yourself, but that the department asks you to include. It's just standard across the department. It looks like I'm running out of time, so I'm almost done. Another really great thing to include in the syllabus is to talk about the course goals and the course objectives. And here I've included an excerpt from a syllabus written by one of our grad students. And here, it's a sort of beautiful distillation of what the goals and objectives are. Goals are understood to be sort of the broader things that you want to accomplish. So in this case, developing critical thinking, research, and writing skills through visual analysis. Those are the broader goals. But in order to achieve these goals, right, the course has very specific objectives. There are specific smaller things that you want to accomplish in the course. So here there's a really great list of the specific things that in this course the instructor wants to accomplish. Then once you're done with all of that, incredibly important to proofread your syllabus. It should be polished, well-written, and well-formatted. And of course, too, remember, when we're thinking about objectives and goals and we're in the weeds, kind of choosing these different texts, and we're working on all the details of our syllabus, as you design your course, remember what our ultimate goal is, which is really to help our students develop as scholars, right? So for us, the paradigm is not, information. It's not about sort of conveying information and receiving information, but rather it's the development of, sort of critical thinking abilities, critical reading, and then also empowering them to then be scholars and to conduct their own research and make their own interventions. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think one thing that I get out of this is that we should be guided by the dictum, less is more. Less is more. Once you remember less is more, you remember Dr. Miles, and then you remember that course designing is not about self, but it's about inclusive pedagogy. It's about perhaps an element of what I called pedagogical biographical discourse. I will share with you what I mean by that, a concept I developed in 2010 and I have used in contextualizing content in the humanities as well as STEM area. The next presentation will be coming from Dr. Willis, who will speak to us. I believe you posted something about modification. I'll allow you to do proper introduction and then present. You have 20 minutes also. Your clock will start in, I'll say 9 o'clock my time, which means in 2 minutes. While he is waiting to do that, kindly please put your comments and questions in the chat box. And I want us panelists to kindly visit the chat box and see comments or questions that we would like to speak to at the end of the last presentation. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Professor Tijani, Professor Mills, Professor Adam Moyo. Really happy to have this opportunity to participate in this panel. And there are a number of things about which that I'm going to reference that intersect with what has already been stated. And so I'll try to be very focused on using my time in a manner that moves the conversation continuously further. So the focus for me is on developing a teaching philosophy, right? And the key question here is, what is your vision, right? Is the question that I ask anyone writing a teaching philosophy to keep in focus. More specifically, that teaching philosophy is a narrative that I would argue should encompass aspects of one's values and beliefs about teaching and learning, which I think is crucial, and it should, and thus more than simply talking about the content and the actual methodology of what you're doing. The part of that, the emphasis is on the philosophy. What's the philosophical, the intellectual underpinnings that structure, that explain why you make particular connections to course content in terms of knowledge and different modalities of how learners and teachers engage such knowledge as well. So there are 4 components that I'm going to highlight here, right? So one is the organizing principle, right? Thinking of philosophy as the organizing principle of the teaching that reflects the choices of courses, reading materials, assignments, and in and outside the classroom activities. That it says something about who you are or who the teacher is, the context in which one is teaching, right? In terms of the intellectual home and the particular audience. So whether we're talking about, a research institution or a more teaching focused institution, and then looking more specifically, are we talking about Ivy League? Are we talking about the kind of public-private institutions, right? Which, some would, which, for instance, Berkeley, Michigan, Virginia, UT Austin, right, are these kind of flagship, nationally renowned state institutions that do more than simply serve, the residents of that state, for instance, right? World-class institutions, right? Are we talking about more institutions that serve primarily the state population and overwhelmingly that state's population, right? Or are we talking about, in the context where I teach, a small liberal arts institution, right? So that philosophy should engage, or it should reflect what is that audience, right? So if, if we're thinking about this from the perspective of a person applying for a job, then depending on the job you're applying for, depending on the institution, that philosophy should be tailored in a way that speaks to that context, right? Or else you're going to leave the committee wondering, why are you seeking this job? What makes you the right, this the place for you to advance this kind of philosophy, in essence, right? Or are we writing from the perspective of a person who's already at the institution undergoing some level of review process, right? And so these are going to reflect different ways of thinking about and the audience, the context of the institutional home, the level of intimate knowledge one brings to that document, and to be able to craft it in a manner that makes it legible and clear to people there, who you are, what it is you're doing, and why that is the institution at which to do that kind of work. So that's a really crucial element here that I don't want to get lost. Of course, why your courses matter, not only to your students in your, for instance, department, or if there's an interdisciplinary program that one is located, but in regards to the larger campus context and to the kind of mission of that institution within the larger community as well. So the philosophy should somehow arguably speak to that, right? And again, and as I suggested earlier, I was kind of tipping my hand in terms of the genres or avenues, right? Are we thinking about this in the context of creating as a job applicant applying versus going through, some form of review process where one is already at the institution, right? Because that is going to matter significantly to those reading it and to how you craft it. So what I'm going to do here is provide a little bit of some examples from some of my own teaching philosophy, and recognize that, one of the most productive ways with which to really dig into the details of developing a teaching philosophy ultimately is to share such documents, right? So any opportunities that individuals have to participate in some kind of teaching philosophy workshop in which drafts or in which, work that has already previously been, circulated as depending on one's job, offers the opportunity to do so. I think that can be most helpful. So even, thinking to the organizers or anyone hearing this who might be looking at kind of next steps beyond this, it would be great to have two different venues, one venue in which scholars who already kind of established at particular institutions share the documents that they've created, typically at different review stages, so that people can get a sense of what these documents look like and how they get tailored to a particular context, and a context that, a person knows extremely intimately, versus, another venue is an opportunity where people, for instance, maybe are job candidates, are creating or further developing them to tailor them for specific jobs, et cetera. Right. And I think that could be another very fruitful avenue through which to really make this the most meaningful, because each philosophy is going to be really a reflection of who those individuals are and the way in which they speak to the context. Okay. So with that being said, part of my own teaching philosophy, seeks to engage kind of critical pedagogy, right? And so I draw here from Ira Shor's quoted in Empowering Education: "The habits of thought, reading, writing, and speaking, which go beneath surface meaning, first impressions, dominant myths, official pronouncements, traditional cliches, received wisdom, among others," right? To understand the deep meaning, rooted cause, context, ideology, and personal circumstances of any action, event, processes, organization, subject, etc. Right? I'm summarizing a bit here, but the importance that I'm highlighting here is going beyond and thinking deeply about the underlying ideas, impressions, myths, opinions, to understand the kind of deeper meaning, right, of an institution, of an event, of an experience, right? That's part of what critical pedagogy does, and that's part of the context out of which I root my own teaching philosophy. So in essence, what one can do is start with a quote that somehow encapsulates something core to one's own philosophical approach to teaching, and then use that as a kind of point of departure into introducing of oneself, or one could start more with something about the particular context in terms of the field or the institution or the particular moment, and then how you build from there, right? So who are you, right, as a teacher, right? Here, who you are, where you teach, your institutional home and context is immensely important. So is one seeking to, and again, this reflects more my location within a small liberal arts context, the notion of cultivating a sense of global citizenship, for instance, is something that my institution values, right? Many institutions do. But versus, maybe at a research institution, and I'm even thinking about, right at the end of Professor Mills's presentation, we're, talking about the emphasis on the students developing as scholars, right? So is the philosophy aimed at cultivating a kind of citizenship and a way in which one navigates the world as such? Is it navigating the world as a scholar, right? As a person who kind of is a producer of knowledge or a critical consumer of knowledge, of ideas. And so again, these are different ways out of which to think about who you are, who is your audience, and what's the what is it the aim of what your teaching seeks to do, right? And again, what I've put in here, it speaks specifically to that in terms of juxtaposing the kind of research versus small liberal arts environment. So why your classes matter to all your students, right? And so this is really crucial here to think through, especially in this moment in time where there seems to be a far larger conversation, not only in the U.S. But even around the world in many ways, partly further animated or fueled by the kind of global Black Lives Matter movement, right? To think about why is it that our courses matter, right? Why does education important, right? Why is a liberal arts education or a research institution important? Why is global citizenship or a particular kind of citizenship, for instance, when the US or the Nigerian context important, right? And how do your classes help provide the context for people to think through, to develop, to probe these kinds of issues and understanding the value of what the classes seek to do, I think is exceedingly important. So here's an example, again, of how I connect, in terms of, a kind of sample statement from my teaching philosophy that takes the kind of context of teaching African history, thinking about the challenge of doing that within the context of the US. Again, if you're teaching in Nigeria or Ghana, for instance, right, the context is going to be a bit different. And yet, arguably, the collective experience of colonialism is going to lead to some ways of thinking about, elements of resonance here, right? But in the context of teaching within the US, students who overwhelmingly will have never traveled to the continent, have only learned about Africa through the media representations within news, within television, within popular culture, right? That all shapes the context out of which students are not encountering Africa for the first time, but that we're having to grapple with. How is it that our classes decouple, destabilize, challenge, make them rethink what are their existing knowledge set of assumptions, right, about Africa, about gender, about history, about culture, about religion, for instance, as key and foundational to the context of teaching and learning. And so then you can see where then I go and recognizing that and the issue of biases to connecting it to critical pedagogy, right, and then, explaining, how I then take an intersectional approach, right, which is interested in recognizing the kind of interlocking and overlapping systems of oppression, such as slavery, colonialism, a concept I referenced just a moment ago, imperialism, right, and to understanding, social categories and experiences of gender, sexuality, ability, class, race, among other, and then prioritizing the legacies of those systems, colonialism, slavery, and how they shape the conditions under which knowledge about Africa is produced, right? And then I say it's within this context then that African history emerges as students needing to grapple, or this opportunity to grapple with issues of power, positionality, and knowledge production, right? I draw on some critical race theory, right? So what are some, again, as we think about the teaching philosophy, what are some of the philosophical underpinnings that reflect the values, the content, the methodologies engaged in the course? For me, critical race theory then is a part of that endeavor, right? And thinking about different ways in which, knowledge, even the study of the African past or its place within or Africa's place within a larger Atlantic world context. If we take a kind of Philip Curtin, Atlantic slave trade approach, which tends to be far more economic oriented, about export, right, as a way of approaching African history, right? And there's some who argue that it's out of that context and that question that African history emerges as a field of study within the Western Academy. Well, some would take a different perspective of that, drawing on the work of Black intellectuals like W.E.B. Du Bois's Souls of Black Folks, even his data visualizations, which predate, Curtin's thinking about, the regions from which people came, by more than a half century. And then to even looking at, the work of William Martin, talking about the rise of African studies and the transnational struggle for the decolonization of African knowledge production. So again, I'm using this as examples of how there are particular kind of philosophical that then connect to particular content and particular ways of viewing history and of narrating that history as well, right? And even showing, how thinking about different reading, different texts, different intellectuals as essential to establishing that context can lead one to take different approaches from different perspectives. And then finally, in terms of the genres, right? Again, are those listening to this presentation, listening from the perspective of developing a teaching philosophy for a job application? Wherein one has to, I would argue, then take the next step of thinking about what aspects of that philosophy are kind of core, such that whether you're applying for a research or a teaching institution, they're essential to your teaching philosophy regardless. What other aspects might shift or might take greater emphasis in one context versus another, right? Applying for a research institution or for a liberal arts context, right? And so these are really crucial questions and things to think about when one is developing these materials, right? It sticks out as a person who's not only developed these as having been a job candidate for a number of jobs, but then undergone reviews and now even been a part of committees looking at other job candidates, for instance. What kind of approach you take says a lot to the committee about the level of thought and care you put into thinking about that institution, right? And that's really core for people who are on such committees, right? And so what you can do to signal that you are thinking very deeply about how your philosophy is tailored to that particular context. Study the websites of the departments, of the college, and any kind of learning and teaching center or places wherein you get insight into the culture of teaching and learning at that institution is really crucial. It'll give you some of the kind of vocabulary, but also kind of the kinds of discourses that people expect you at that institution to be a part of, to the kind of pedagogical practices that they're expecting you to be able to narrate your teaching in relationship to, right, is going to be crucial. So, you do not need to copy paste what someone else has done. But what's crucial is how are you able to distill where your approach fits into approaches that others have taken as well is going to be quite crucial. And then, of course, as
Dr. Willis?
Yes.
I'm sorry to do this. I'm so sorry, all the panelists. Can you please round up?
Yes.
I'm getting a signal that they're gonna. Thank you.
Sure. No problem. Thank you so much. So I'll be finished in less than a minute. So building off of just the previous presentation in terms of discussing, the syllabi, right? That the teaching philosophy should intersect with your syllabi. It should help people who then look at your syllabi able to understand the connective tissue among them, and to understand why you make particular choices. And then, of course, these documents can also be tailored for, if one is going kind of 3rd year or 10-year review or some other review process. I've hoped that this has been generative for those interested in this topic of the teaching philosophy, and I'll be eager to answer questions in the Q&A. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. Brilliant presentation. I guess Dr. Kolawole is having challenges because I've seen him in and out, and I could see that he probably was also at the Secretariat of LSA, perhaps at University of Lagos, looking at the environment, from the video. I'm guessing if it's still available. Okay, Adekola is still here with us. If you don't mind, 5 minutes, if you can just speak to your paper. And Dr. Willis, please stop sharing. And I'll need all of you to kindly go into the chat room and pick maybe 1 or 2, at best 1, that you would like to respond to. That is a panelist. There are questions there, and I've also asked some questions. Dr. Kolawole Adekola, I've introduced you before, historical archaeologist, and if you could just give us in summary 5 minutes so that we can wrap up by 9:30 here. The host has been so generous, the organizers are generous to us, and that is the best they can do. I think the guy signed out again, so let's just go ahead. Any one of you can take up the questions or comments. Any order, you can just go ahead.
Yeah, Prof. I'll just I have a question here from Yalode Alaga, and okay, let me take one from Angela. I'll just take one of them. She asked the question: things about classroom teaching that must be inculcated in virtual learning. My answer is simple. Your classroom must be guided by hybrid teaching philosophy, teaching method, for it to fit to virtual. It means that from day one, when you are planning your just like your objective teaching materials, you are preparing to go virtual. It means that you are having an hybrid method, in the sense that from day one, you are planning to see that someday there might be people who might want to get this knowledge across, who are not within the 4 walls of classroom. So that's my answer to you. You have to unmute, Professor. You have to unmute. You are muted.
Sorry.
Yes.
I said, who is Yalaga?
Yes, that's the name. Yes, it's the name. Yabo de Alaga, that's the name.
Oh, Yabo de Alaga. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Alaga. Yes.
So you've answered that question.
Yeah, I've answered the question. Please.
Okay, thank you very much.
Let me just one more quickly.
Okay.
There's Yabo de Alaga. I answered that of Angela. Alaga asked the question: how to effectively assess students in virtual teaching learning? And my answer is simple. Effective assessment in virtual teaching and learning is not a one-day thing, as we want to do here. In most part of Nigeria, you just want to come to class and give a test. You want to come to class and give exam. In virtual teaching, your assessment is a continuous exercise based on the feedback you get from the student. So if you are waiting for 1 day to say you're going to write tests tomorrow, you're not going to have a good assessment, because you are not there all the time. You need to get constant feedback from what you give the student. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Miles? Mills, do you have any comment?
Sure. Yes, I do actually. I just wanted to follow up on Dr. Willis's discussion of his institution's emphasis on developing global citizens, and that there could be perhaps a sort of difference between, forming scholars, this sort of emphasis on forming scholars versus on forming global citizens. As you know, I'm at UC Berkeley. It's a major research institution, But I would say that the two for me are really connected. You know, I think we believe very strongly, at least in, you know, in my department and in my sphere, that when you focus on helping students develop as scholars, it's not necessarily with the aim of turning them into professors, right? It's not doesn't necessarily mean that they'll go on to go to graduate school. I strongly believe that when you help students form these this sort of scholarly disposition, and give them the tools, that in fact helps them become better global citizens, right? Because then they know how to do their own research, right? They know how to formulate important questions that they can then answer through inquiry, through research. And they also can develop that kind of critical perspective on the world. So for me, the two are really connected. I don't want to see the two as distinct. There was also a great question in the chat about questions. Why would we ask questions in a course description? Okay, and these are really kind of questions that guide inquiry, because this kind of approach to course design does not see the course as simply, you know, the instructor imparting information to the students and the students being tested on that information. Did they understand it? Did, you know, can they sort of repeat it back to me? It's not that approach. Rather, the idea is that it's like the instructor and the students are embarking on a kind of journey together, in which there are these really important questions about, let's say, I don't know, the relationship between, I just designing a syllabus on art and crisis in neoliberal Senegal. So the question is, you know, what is the relationship between art production and this sort of decades long economic, social crisis that Senegal has been in? So one starts with questions, and then you spend the semester trying to answer those questions together, right? So instead of just saying, okay, well, you know, this information is already there, or the instructor has already figured everything out. Instead, together, we are going to be answering these. We're going to be co-producing knowledge, in fact. And that connects to another really great question that I got in the chat, which is about the input of students in syllabus development. And that actually is something that is really interesting, and that we do try to do. So some instructors actually have the students sort of help determine like what the participation norms will be in the class, and how participation will be evaluated. So that's something that they collectively work on together, rather than the instructor just putting it in a policy on the syllabus. The class together will work on that. And then the idea is that they're more invested in it because they have decided together what participation in the class should look like. And then also too, we try to be very responsive to when students are feeling really overloaded or they're not understanding the materials. That's when we activate that less is more principle even more. And, you know, we cut things out of the syllabus. We remove readings. We spend more time going over the material, because it's not helping anyone if the students are overloaded, confused, stressed out, you know. So that's just a very short answer to that question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Miles. Thank you. I have to use that much time. You are 7 hours behind Nigeria. We are 5 hours behind. You are in California. And I want to especially thank you for this extra mile, as we say at Walmart, customer service. It's not easy getting up, waking the whole family, and then you know, going somewhere. We are seriously out of time, and but I still believe we have 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, you're actually in Connecticut. Okay, no problem. Thanks to remote teaching and distance learning. I have Dr. Adekola trying to share. I think he's out again. Is he still in? Okay. He's at the secretariat in Unilag, I guess. Unmute yourself. If they are willing to allow us 5 minutes, just talk to us in 3 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Sorry, Dr. Willis, you may not be able to have any further intervention. Can you unmute yourself, please, Dr. Adekola? We cannot hear you, sir.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can
Hello?
hear you. You have 3 minutes, please.
3 minutes.
Just
3 minutes.
just summarize. We are far off, or you can just share your slide. We are far off. You are in Nigeria, and I don't want to go over this. If I have my way, time is up. I can't be begging the host to give us 5 minutes, 5 minutes. And imagine someone in US and other parts of the world that have to wake up. So please, you kind of using your 3 minutes.
I have to talk on travel, developing travel courses, and seeing fieldwork courses for students and staff. Actually, this is something I've prepared for the past 2 years. Remember that we were supposed to take it last year, but because of the COVID thing, the thing didn't work out.
We appreciate that. We appreciate that preface.
Yes.
Go straight to the content of your presentation, please. The host has, they've told me our time is up.
All right. The content of my presentation has to do with fieldwork and travel, preparing curriculum for fieldwork and travel courses. And I started by trying to say that in fieldwork courses, it's basically something that you have to do outside the classroom. I mean, it's not something that you have to do within the conventional classroom basis, which is the normal thing. And already we know that even the classroom basis is now shifting right now. Because right now what we are doing now is an online thing. So fieldwork basically is for students and staff to go out there to collect primary data. And for us in archaeology and in anthropology, primary data outside there means going into the entire public to get the information that we actually needed to be able to get our data for the kind of work that we do. That is one thing. How do we get source for this data? What are the parameters that we need to do? And how, as students, how do we ensure that these data are firsthand for us to be able to write the kind of information that we need, at the end of the day? It's a whole long process because first of all, we must try to understand that the data that we are going to collect form the bedrock of what we do. For instance, as archaeology, there is nothing you can do other than to go out there, because if you stay in your office and begin to write, you are what is called an armchair anthropologist or an armchair archaeologist. And being an armchair archaeologist means you are just being theoretical. I mean, and at this time, if you are just being theoretical, you are not going to write anything that is meaningful. So that's the import of what I'm trying to say. And secondly, if as an archaeologist, you get out in there to get the data, it is then you can begin to make up, light up whatever you have as information for the audience that you intend to give the information to. There are certain steps to take even before going to the field. I mean, you have to consult the relevant stakeholders, including OBAs, King, police, National Commission for Museum and Monuments, if for an archaeologist, and if for other kind of people. You really need to get their secure their consent before you can go to the field. And once you have all of that, you then go to the field and do the fieldwork properly. Fieldwork properly ensures there is bonding, also ensures that the learner and the learned also continue to sharpen their skills. And it's an avenue for the learner to learn and relearn within the period of the fieldwork. Normally in Nigeria, we spend, it depends on the individual involved, you can spend up to close to 3 months, close to 5 months, depending on the nature of what you are going to, what are the problem you're trying to solve. Nowadays, we embark on what is called a proper solving research design, and that entails trying to solve a particular problem by before going to the field, so that the field will actually address a particular problem. That's the essence of what we do in fieldwork exercise. Like I said, this is something I've prepared for 2 years, and to present this under 3 minutes is, well, since you said it's 3 minutes, I think I can justify that 3 minutes. Thank you.
Professor
Thank you.
Prof,
Okay, please go ahead.
Sorry, please. The next section is starting in 10 minutes. If you don't mind,
yes, we are running up now.
Please. Thank you so
much.
Prof.
Even less than 1 minute. I apologize to the president of the association. This is so don't let me use the word. He shouldn't have, but I want to say that we thank each and every one of you for your presentation, for sharing knowledge with us. And I want to especially thank the panelists for finding time to do this, inclusive of our colleague that has challenges presenting. To all the attendees, I want to thank you, especially all the third one scholars. I can see most of them here present. We started at the height of 65. We are about 45 now, and it is well. I believe learning has occurred, and I thank you, and we're signing out. Stay blessed, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.